what's maybe one or two of the biggest myths that you see holding new investors back from jumping in either on the active investment side to real estate or the passive side?
To me, the biggest myth is definitely thinking that you already have to be rich.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in.
All right. Welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into yet another episode of the Freedom Point. We're so glad you're here with us again today. I've got another amazing guest. Of course, I always say that, but Linda Holtz is truly a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored to be part of the show today.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to chopping it up with you as well. Linda is originally from France and moved to the US with 2 suitcases and a big dream back in 2012. She transformed her background in sales and property management into a thriving real estate career. Now, Linda leverages over a decade of industry experience to educate and inspire others to start securing their own financial future. For those that know me personally, Linda, they would say that your bio is similar to mine in terms of what we're primarily focused on today, with one big exception. And that is, I think right now I live maybe about 12 miles away from where I was born and raised. So certainly didn't have to travel over the pond, to end up where I am today. So would love for you to maybe, unpack a little bit more about, your move to the US back in 2012, with just 2 suitcases and a dream, and what was really going through your mind during that time and taking such a big leap of faith.
Yes, absolutely. And the 2 suitcase and a dream, that's kind of my tagline, but it's true. I did have 2 suitcases. So that's kind of the funny part. So to go back, basically at the time I was doing I was doing my master's degree at a business school. And so part of the curriculum was we had to go to New York. So growing up, I actually always thought that I would somehow end up living in California, probably LA for some reason. But the school said New York, and I was like, well, it's still America, so I'll go give it a try. I had no expectation whatsoever to go there because, yes, I had seen movies and shows, I guess. But once again, my thinking was one day I'll be in Cali. And so, long story short, I landed in New York, had an amazing summer studying there, and really kind of realizing more so as almost an adult what the American mentality was like. My mom actually always jokes that when the very first time I came on vacation to the US, I was 13 and I came home and I told her one day I'll live in America. I don't remember that. That's what she said. But seeing it and experiencing it again as, like I said, almost an adult, at that point, I was like 21. It really reinforced that. It really reinforced that I love the way that Americans were thinking about entrepreneurial spirits and really the idea of failure. For me, I remember that this was the biggest part where I was like, I'm not scared to fail here. And so it was really interesting to feel like you can do anything you want because it doesn't matter if you don't do it the first time. You can do it on the second time or even the third or even the fourth. And so that really attracted me to that. And so the following year, I came for a summer. So the following year, I was supposed to do an internship like most students do. So I decided to do it in New York. And I thought, I'll do it for 1 year just to see what it feels like, and then I'll go home. And fast forward, it's been 13 years and I'm still here. It wasn't easy. Obviously, it wasn't easy to come back. I had to go home to do my paperwork. And once I came back, it wasn't easy to stay over the years. But yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
That's a great story. I appreciate that. So you really, came to the U.S. in pursuit of, completing your education, your master's degree. you end up in the Big Apple, to do that. Join an internship type program, then you're, kind of scratching the entrepreneurial itch, that I know a lot of Americans in the US have and want to kind of scratch, right? But then at some point, you ended up in sales and property management. So maybe let's kind of talk about, your journey into sales. What did that look like? Your journey into property management. What did that look like? And then eventually, you're obviously going to pivot, from there, into raising capital for real estate projects. So we'd love for you to maybe unpack a little bit more of that story.
Yes, for sure. And so, like you said, I ended up finding an internship. And so, the funny thing about that word internship is that really that's what it was for me. For the company, I was just any other employee. They did not really see the difference, other than, they had to help me with my paperwork. Um, and so it sounds very fancy when you say internship, but really the job that I found was door to door sales. So it was interesting at the time, especially, coming off of a master's degree from a business school in Paris. My dad has been a businessman, salesman for decades. He's always been in sales. So for him, it was a little bit of that moment of, I want it better for you. And for me, it was like, no, but you don't get it. This is how I'm going to start. And eventually I'm going to work my way up. And so everyone thought I was crazy. But for me, I always had that vision. I always knew exactly where I was going, even if it was going to take me some time. And looking back, it was the best education ever. I mean, I really loved it. It really taught me, like, how to not be dejected by no's, and how to keep going, and how to keep your attitude, like how to stay positive. I think that was probably the first, even though I didn't know it at the time, the first introduction I ever had to attract good thoughts. Like, if you want to manifest good things and work on big goals in your life, you can't do that and also be a negative Nelly all day, every day. And so sales really taught me that. But of course, door to door sales is not the funnest. And so eventually I decided that I wanted something a little different. And that's how property management found me. I really didn't find it, it found me. I actually entered a management company as a customer service representative, which is, for me, that was the natural evolution, right? Like, I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to not be like, take it when people would be mean to my face, because I came from sales. So I was like, yeah, no problem. I'll give it a try, even though I knew nothing of the industry. And then right back, that feeling of, I know where I want to go long term, really manifested again, because as soon as I started, I was told, hey, if you do very well at this position, you'll become an assistant. Eventually, you'll have your own portfolio. And for me, when I heard that, I heard one day you'll have a big corner office and you'll be the president of the company. I was like, okay, that works for me. I'll do that. Now, the way it worked is I just soaked in all the experience I could for the next decade. And eventually I realized, hey, I want to be the boss, but I don't want to be the boss for somebody else's dream. I want to be the boss for my dream. And really, that's when investing came into the picture, is when I realized I want to be able, especially being from another country, I wanted to be able to travel back and forth whenever I wanted. I didn't want to have to ask for vacation time. I didn't want to be able to only travel during Christmas, because it's like you only have 2 weeks of vacation per year, and it's such a long trip to go back home. Well, then I'm going to keep all my 2 weeks for Christmas time. And that means the rest of the year I can never go anywhere, I can never do anything, unless it's like a 3-day weekend or something like that. And so all those things sounded terrible to me. At the end of the day, I wanted to have a little bit more of that time freedom. I think that a lot of people talk about being financially free, but for me, I was like, the time aspect is the best part. Being able to be geographically free is the best part. And so I started investing as a landlord and realized pretty quickly that, hey, this isn't exactly working with my geographically free vision here, because I have a property to take care of. My first investment journey started with buying a triplex that my husband and I house hacked. So we lived in the middle, and we had renters above us and under us. And at the time, I don't want to go into too much details unless you want me to, But at the time, we also did what's called an FHA 203K loan. So that included a lot of construction. So it was really a big trial by fire of how to manage contractors, how to manage a project, how to manage renters, and all those things we knew from being in property management. But it's very different when it's you. It's very different when it's your name on the mortgage, and you have to know how to not, let the ship sink, basically. And that gave us the bite of, we want to keep doing that, but there's got to be a faster way to scale. And eventually that's what got us to be in multifamily, is because we realized if we can take care of 3 units, why not take care of 100?
I'm Zach Haptonstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I appreciate you unpacking that with me. I'd love to go back and really kind of, I don't know if I want to say compliment you on something, but something that I've really seen being a recovering sales professional myself. Okay. Some of the main differences between, those that are successful in business in general, they have that background of carrying a bag. You called it door-to-door sales or door-to-door selling, right? And it's these transferable skills, whether it be actual skills themselves, emotionally, physically, right? Just in how they conduct and communicate, with prospects and clients, for example. It's those transferable skills that they take with them later in life, right? Whatever their later in life pursuits are. And some people that's climbing the corporate ladder, and others it's scratching that entrepreneurial itch. But you talked a little bit about, learning how to deal with rejection, right? And failure, and maintaining a positive, attitude, being resilient, accepting the grind. And I love at the very end, you alluded to the fact that you came to this point in your life where you're like, why am I grinding it out every day to fulfill someone else's dreams when I could be putting forth that same amount of effort to fulfill my own dreams? And that really did stick with me. So I really appreciate that. So now, Linda, as we kind of transition, into your real estate journey, and you kind of alluded to this already, but you talked about, some challenges, right? And I'd really like to know, what were some of those kind of newer challenges that you faced as a newcomer, really looking to build a real estate career in a new country, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so one of the very first challenge that we faced, one of the very first, I guess, was vacancy, right? We unfortunately ended up buying our first property in January of 2020. Didn't realize that 2 months later, and that was in Chicago. So 2 months later, there was going to be a pretty big shutdown, and it was going to feel a little bit like the world was ending. So for the first several months, our units were empty, and we were kind of going back and forth between that's okay because we don't really know what's happening out there, but then also we have to pay for this mortgage now, and it's 3 units as opposed to one. And so beyond that, what you would call first challenge, the one that really stuck with me was, and I like to joke about it on the internet, like you and I connected on LinkedIn, right? So I like to joke about it on LinkedIn a lot. But I always say we got catfished by our renters. And so that was a one big story that was like the first big story where, we went to screen a potential tenant that looked great on paper, very nice lady, met her in person, everything checked out, job, previous rental history, all of that. And then it turns out it's somebody else who moved in. And all of a sudden, the person who moved in, you have no information on, and you don't know who is living below you because you're house hacking. And so all of those, everything that comes with that was the first challenge that we kind of had to look at each other with my husband and think, do we really want to do this? And then, of course, moving into multifamily, same thing. At the beginning, we came in bright eyed with our property management experience and thought everybody's going to want us to manage their properties. We thought we're going to be asset managers because, yeah, we have all this experience. Of course, everyone out there is going to say, hey, I found this property. I have the cash to buy it. I don't want to take care of it. How about you're the asset manager, even though you've never done that before? Because as most people know in multifamily, asset management is not property management. Those are two different things. And so for us, that was another challenge that we had to overcome once we made that switch was, oh, it's that's not how it works. You really have to like make a name for yourself. You really have to get out there and meet people and network. And by doing that and sharing our stories, because my husband is in sales too, people started telling us, hey, you actually should raise capital. Because not only it's going to accelerate your goals, but it's also more in line with your personality. And all of a sudden, it was that moment of, you know what, that's true. But then that means that for the last several months that we focus on something, now we have to focus on something brand new. And now we have to go back into that mentality of, I mean, my husband's still in sales, but for me, it had been years since that mentality of how to talk to people, how to approach them, how to deal with a totally different type of rejection. It's definitely not the same going door to door, doing other types of sale as it is raising capital. But there's rejection there too. And so all of those challenges, they're all different along the way, but they're all part of the process for sure.
Yeah, and I'm certain that those challenges, have made you stronger as an individual because you've certainly been able to fail forward. And I really appreciate you highlighting something, and just so our listening audience understands, when it comes to investing in multifamily real estate, oftentimes we're not talking about, a fourplex or an eightplex, right? We're talking about, apartment communities that might have, 50, 150, 350 units, right? And in order to manage those properties successfully, it's really kind of a three-legged stool. You really have kind of the acquisitions team, you have the asset management team, and then you have the team that goes and sources and finds the capital. Sometimes that team is in charge, of negotiating terms with senior lenders, but also going outside to, institutional level investors or retail investors to encourage them to partner with you, on that investment. So really appreciate you highlighting, that and the importance. I had to look up the term catfished. I've never heard that before, and I'm very surprised that I've not. So I looked it up, and it said it's basically somebody who enters into a relationship by means of a fictional one. Usually it obviously happens online, but
Yes.
maybe I'm the only one that has not heard that term before, but I had to look it up. So thank you for expanding my vocabulary today.
Of course, no problem. And it came from, I mean, I don't know where it came from originally, but there was a very popular TV show at the time. So that's how I got the idea of like, you know what, this is what happened to us. It wasn't a relation, I mean, it was a professional relationship, but that's exactly what happened. They said they were one person and it turned out to be somebody completely different.
Yeah, no, I hear you there. I've got teenagers, and sometimes I think they're catfished themselves. You never know who you're going to get some days, right? So you've spent largely at this point. I mean, you've spent over a decade now in the industry. What's maybe one or two of the biggest myths that you see holding new investors back from jumping in either on the active investment side to real estate or the passive side?
To me, the biggest myth is definitely thinking that you already have to be rich. You already have to have millions. You already have to have potentially billions, which is interesting because I think there's a caveat to that. But let me start by answering your question. So, the funny story with that one is that I have a friend who focuses heavily on residential real estate. And I was doing some research for her years ago on syndication. So I had actually looked up what it was and how it worked and what accredited means and all that, and thought to myself, oh, I'll never do that. Like, this is too big. This is not for me. I don't have the funds to do this. And so fast forward in a roundabout way to come right back to it. and realize, oh, wait a second, this is actually doable at my level where I am right now. That was very eye opening because it really showed me the power of mindset, right? It's like back then I just thought it wasn't for me. Nothing changed about the industry, nothing changed about the concept. It was only me. It was only in my head that I had those limiting beliefs before, even though I was like doing the research. The research, the data is neutral. But for me, I felt negatively about it until all of a sudden my eyes were opened that no, you can feel positive about it and you can actually take action on it. And so that's, I think, the biggest myth. Now, that being said, I always tell people it has to align with what you want to do. I think that social media, unfortunately, sells us very rosy pictures sometimes of what it takes, whether you want to be a landlord or a syndicator, whether you want to do apartment complexes or retail centers, it doesn't matter. It has to go with, it has to help you sleep at night. I always tell my investors, don't invest in something that's going to keep you up at night. I love my sleep too much. I don't want you to have to like lose yours. And it also has to, make you feel good. Obviously, you don't want to lose money and you want to make money, you want to make a return, you want to make a profit. And like I mentioned, you don't want to lose sleep. But once you have all of that, why not do something that actually is going to have an impact too? Why not actually take a step further and do something that will make you happy? Like for me, I love real estate. I actually love houses. I actually love talking to residents. That's probably why I've done it for the last 10 years. So my niche is not, let's say, industrial warehouses. Not first because I don't know them, but I could learn, right? The only thing is, I'd rather focus on the human aspect because that's what I like. And I'd rather look at units because that's what I know. And so I think that's very important. Is like, yes, remember that you can do it too, but ask yourself, what is it that I actually want to do? How much time do I actually want to spend on this? How much money do I actually want to spend? And all the education that is going to entail, am I ready for this too?
Yeah, totally. I mean, being clear on what your own personal, goals are is incredibly important. And then thinking about, what do I want the end result to look like? And then you basically reverse engineer, a plan from there. And so obviously important takeaway here is for those that are listening, that have an aspiration to get into real estate or to continue, with that investment, thesis or plan. It's really important that maybe you surround yourself with others that have been there, done that, right? And to continue to, rather than continue to deploy more capital into deals, maybe you need to deploy more capital into yourself first and really invest in your own, education so that you can have clarity in terms of what the best path forward is. I was going to ask you what your favorite asset class is, but I feel like I've already landed on that based on this discussion. So would love to have you kind of let us know a little bit more about why multifamily specifically. Is there a specific, demographic or, type of tenant base, that you typically like to invest into? And is there any specific, market or submarket locations that appeal to you the most?
Yes, definitely. So right now I'm in Houston, Texas. So my husband and I love the Texas Triangle. So anywhere from Dallas to San Antonio, Austin area to Houston, that's really our bread and butter. We love value adds. That's how we got started. So for those who are not necessarily familiar, that means buying an apartment complex that maybe is not managed well or hasn't been renovated in a while, and really come in and make those things better, whether it's through renovations, whether it's through new management tactics, whether it's through adding income streams that were not there before, just making it better overall and adding value by forcing appreciation to that community. So we love that aspect too on apartment complexes. But I will tell you, my passion project for the long term is definitely senior housing. So I don't know if that's going to be a curveball, but my mom has been a nurse for the last 30 years. And so my first student jobs when I was going through high school, college, were always at nursing homes. My best friend worked at McDonald's, and I would spend all my weekends with older folks, and I loved it. I thought that, number one, they always had very great insights on life to share with me, and they loved the fact that I'm 18 years old and I'm here, so why not share the knowledge? But I also saw, unfortunately, that those nursing homes charge a lot to not always provide the best housing conditions. And so that's definitely a passion project of mine, is to be able to use what I've learned in real estate the last 10 years to now be able to offer better living conditions for our elders, because I've seen how some of them live and I've seen how much they pay to live that way. And I'm like, you were a big time judge or you were a big time lawyer and now you pay $10,000 a month for this and you eat applesauce. Like, no offense to applesauce, but there's got to be a better way to age. And so for me, that's really the long-term plan, the long-term vision, is to be able to focus on that niche.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of senior housing as well. I'm a personal investor in over 250 doors across Minnesota and Wisconsin. So I definitely see, that as being a tried and true asset class, especially, in the lens of all the discussion about the baby boomer generation, the gray tsunami, whatever is that you want to call it there. So certainly see that as being a resilient asset class. And, really, you're exactly right. I mean, people pay a lot of money for that type of care, and providing them with a safe, affordable place to really live their last, days of their life, is incredibly important as well. Linda, as both of us raise capital for, real estate projects, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about, from you in terms of maybe what one or two of those absolute necessary skill sets are for those of us that are in the space that have a huge fiduciary responsibility, to protect and preserve our investors' capital. What are maybe one or two different skill sets that you see out there in the space that separate, a capital raiser from being able to raise tens of millions of dollars, versus nothing at all?
Yes, for me, I'll share a sentence that was told to me when I first started. Was, at the time, I was pretty scared of handling other people's money, right? Like, a lot of people in real estate say, oh, this is great to leverage other people's experience, banks' money, and eventually other people's money. For me, I had that, again, maybe a limiting belief or myth that it was scary. What if I lose it? What if something happens? And at the time, I was told, because you think like that, that's why you should do it. I think that a very important, I don't know if it's a skill or more so like a quality that you want to look for with somebody that you're going to invest with, is make sure that they're going to care about your funds the same way that you do. Make sure that they're going to offer you to invest in something that they would want their mom to invest in, or like their great uncle, who, like, whatever it is, you want to make sure that it's someone who has that feeling of, I will lose sleep if I don't take care of you properly because you entrusted me with this. Now, how does that translate to actual skill set? I think number one is grit. It's not an easy thing to do, to raise capital. And I think you have to be, going back to what I was saying earlier, you have to be very clear on what do you want to do. I run into newer people, newer than me, I should say, all the time. And it's easy to look at them and ask them, why do you want to be active? Because it's a lot. Do you realize how much you're going to have to do? I mean, to me, I had always done real estate. I had always either taken care of people's properties or invested into my own properties and self-managed those. I never realized, oh, wait, if now all of a sudden I'm a capital raiser, I have to build a business. I have to have a brand. I have to worry about marketing. I have to have a CRM. And so all of those things, it takes time, it takes effort. And I think the first skill that you should have is not giving up ever, no matter what it takes, always going forth, as long as it is what you want to do. And then the second thing is, I would definitely say, be able to tell a story. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I have yet to see a deal where it's like, oh my gosh, just based on the numbers, this is something that I've never seen before. I mean, most deals, it's we all pretty much do the same thing. We all pretty much buy apartments, make them better, return the funds, right? And the percentages in terms of IRs and cash on cash are usually pretty similar. Like, yes, once in a while you're going to see a home run. But if you start being a passive investor that invests a lot, maybe even to the point of doing that full time, it will always be pretty much the same thing. So are you able to tell a story? Again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, are you working on projects that excite you? Are you working on projects that have an impact on the community? Are you working on projects that are making a change in the world, as cliche as it sounds? And are you able to relay that? Are you able to really let the person across the table understand, like, hey, this is what you're doing here. This is how you're changing your future. This is how you're changing your family's wealth. This is how you're establishing yourself for generations to come. And it's not, again, as easy as it sounds. I think that there's a lot of people out there who love the fact that, hey, you know what? On average, I could 2 times your money every 5 years. Okay, and then what? Like, what is beyond that? What's further than the numbers? And I think that being able to tell that story, not just about the deal, but also how it's going to change the investor's life, that's a very important skill to have for sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. As you were talking, I was thinking to myself, this doesn't just apply to people raising capital. I mean, this really applies to anybody in general in both your personal and your professional life. The ability to favor, people over transactions, the ability to be a good or a better storyteller, right? Because that's really what allows people to connect, authentically and genuinely and transparently with people, is really people that are able to really tell their story. And everybody's got a story. It just depends on how vulnerable people want to get with what that story is and how good they are at telling the story. And then obviously your kind of, statement about being able to connect with others, on an emotional, human level is obviously very powerful, as we interact with people in our personal and professional lives.
Yeah, for sure. And I always tell everyone, at the end of the day, if we could all help just one person, the world would be a better place. So to me, it doesn't matter if I open your eyes to multifamily and you end up going to invest with someone else. If your life is changed by our conversation, then that's great. Like that's what the goal should be. The goal should be educate and open more people's eyes to the possibility of what they could do for themselves. And then, if they want to do it with you, fantastic. But if not, at least you did something good in the world.
Absolutely. So if you were going to start all over again, all right, with just 2 suitcases in 2025, what would you do differently?
So I always struggle with this question because I would start earlier. If I had to answer the question, that's what I would do. That's what I would say. But then at the same time, I think that everything happens for a reason. I'm a big believer that things develop for you when you're ready for them. I mean, I mentioned earlier that I had done research on syndications back in, I think that was 2020 or 2021. And I didn't jump into it with both feet to the point of starting a business until the end of 2023. And so, yeah, I think that every experience is meant to teach you something. I think that you learn a lot more from failure than success. And so part of me wouldn't change anything. But if I had to change anything, I would start early. I would invest in 2008.
Great. Well, that's wonderful, Linda. I've really appreciated, this discussion, and you've brought a tremendous amount of value to our audience. Would there be maybe 1 or 2 different ways that we can connect with you to learn more about what you're up to?
Of course. So LinkedIn is definitely the place where I spend all my time under my name, Linda Holtz. So pretty easy. And then my husband and I's company is M2RE, which stands for Married to Real Estate. So marriedtorealestate.com is our website. Find us there. If you need anything, if you have any questions, please reach out. Like I said, I'm not here to convince anybody to invest with us specifically, as long as you invest. And as long as you change your family's financial future. So that's what we're here for.
That's great. Well, we'll put those links in the show notes for the episode. Again, really appreciate you joining us today, Linda.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And listening audience, thank you again for joining another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.